Today I'll be talking about the F-14 Tomcat and specifically the Gulf of Sidra incidents that it was involved in both 1981 and 1989. So to start off, we're going to be talking about the airframe. The F-14 Tomcat was developed as a fleet defense interceptor and was first introduced into the Navy in 1974. Its hallmark feature was that it was the first of the new generation of teen fighters. This includes the F-14, 15, 16, and 18. Its biggest strengths were that it was developed around the AUG-9 radar platform paired with the AIM-54 Phoenix missile. This was not only the most powerful radar at the time, but also the longest range missile available to the U.S. arsenal. This could go out and reach at ranges well over 100 nautical miles, which was unheard of compared to its predecessor, the F-4 with the Sparrow, which can realistically only hit targets at 10 to 15 nautical miles at top range. It also included a variable wing sweep geometry for optimum lift depending on airspeed and altitude. That means at lower altitudes and lower airspeeds, it could extend its wings to increase lift, letting it have better maneuvering characteristics. However, this would cause drag at higher speeds, so the wings would sweep back to reduce on that drag. And with the higher airspeed, the aircraft would still be able to lift itself and maneuver in a very capable manner. It also included 2 crewmen for a reduced workload and increased situational awareness. With the advent of the AUG-9 radar system, the need for RIO was very apparent as it was a complicated radar system for the time. The F-14 was also a beast to handle. It does not have the fly-by-wire computers that the rest of the teen fighters have, meaning that you could very easily crash this aircraft if you lost your attention or focus. Or if you were not very skilled. Once again, as a fleet defense interceptor, it was originally designed to counter Soviet bombers like the Tu-160 and the Tu-95. However, it would mainly see its role in both a combat air patrol mission versus fighters, as well as during the Afghanistan wars and the Gulf War. It would see itself in a ground attack role, which it succeeded at as well. Just as far as numbers go, its top speed was Mach 2.34, had a service ceiling of 55,000 feet. It had a climb rate of 30,000 feet per minute and could have a range of 2,400 nautical miles. It was long range. It could stay in the air for a long time, and it had a lot of advantages. The only downsides to it were its high maintenance costs due to the variable wing sweep geometry and the amount of parts on the aircraft. It was also a complicated machine to build and maintain. As far as its air-to-air capabilities, as we are talking about air-to-air combat today, at first you have the Fox 1. That is a semi-active radar homing missile. That means the radar needs to be locked onto the target the whole time to track the missile to the target. It does not have any of its own guidance systems built in, and this would be the AIM-7 Sparrow. The Fox 2 missile offering was the AIM-9 Sidewinder. This is an infrared homing missile, heat seeker, as some people know it as. Pretty much what happens is you track your missile or you track your bore sight onto a heat signature like an engine, for example. You get a tone, and then the missile will be able to lock onto this heat signature and fall to the target. So once you fire, you can forget about the missile. You can turn and go evasive if need be. You do not need to track the missile onto the target from there on. Next up is the AIM-54 Phoenix. It is a Fox 3 active radar homing missile. One of the great advantages to the F-14 when it was introduced was its track while scan capability. This means that it would be able to track 24 targets at one time and could simultaneously lock onto 6 of those and launch 6 Phoenixes at them at the same time. It's called an active radar homing missile because you'd have to have those targets still tracked on your radar, but at 12 miles, these missiles would go into a state called pit bull, which means their built-in radar guidance unit would track the missile to target, and then you could turn off and even lose those targets off of your radar scope. It also came included with a 20-millimeter Gatling gun or Gatling cannon. This was from the lessons learned from the F-4 in Vietnam, as this was the F-4's predecessor, and in case that it did need to go into close range combat and go guns with no missiles, it had the capability to do so. Just for informational purposes, the AIM-7 had an effective range, as stated earlier, of 15 nautical miles, but really you could only get a hit within 8 to 10 nautical miles. The Sidewinder had an effective range of 5 nautical miles, and the Phoenix could reach 100 nautical miles. According to some rumors, it could be up to 120 to 145 nautical miles. However, that information is still classified, so we don't really know the real number. However, it could reach out and touch farther than the distance from Washington, D.C. to Baltimore, which is very impressive. Something else we're going to talk about is the situational awareness within the cockpit. This will come into handy later when we're talking about the 1989 incident. The pilot has access to a heads-up display, and the one that I have here on screen is in the air-to-air mode. If you see in the middle, the PH stands for Phoenix. That is your weapon selection indicator. On the right side is your target range. As you see that 10 right there and that caret, that's 10 nautical miles. It's really at about 9 nautical miles to target. That diamond is the target designator showing you what you're locked onto. On the left is closure rate, or how many knots you guys are closing in on each other. And then there's also a reticle, which when locked on will be in the middle of that target designator, or fully locked on, ready to fire. In the bottom right, we have the tactical information display. This is what the Rio sees, and then the pilot also has access to the TID and a repeater in the front cockpit. It shows you everything from the range, bearing, altitude, closure rate, the weapon selection, and then also if the target you're locked onto is friendly or enemy. If you see in the picture here, it is this squared bracket. That means it is an unknown target. A chevron or half diamond represents a enemy target, and then a half crescent represents a friendly target. Just to note, again, once for later, in the 1989 incident, the AUG-9 had a glitch in relaying target information while turning. So while turning, the radar had a update cycle of 2.4 seconds. There'd be a glitch to where if you were turning, it would appear that the target was also turning, which, like I said, will come in handy later. All right, so enough about the F-14, and let's move on to the incidents themselves. So this is the Libyan political situation in the 1980s. So in 1969, Muammar Gaddafi took power of Libya after a military coup, and in 1973, he would declare the line of death above the Gulf of Sidra between the eastern and western tips of Libya. It's displayed on screen here in that red solid line. He announced that anyone entering would be engaged militarily. However, this death line was in direct violation of international law. Once again, if you look at the screen, that green line off the coast of Libya would be their borders according to international law. However, Gaddafi extended these borders to the line of death. This would shut down military and trade access to any foreign powers. Obviously, this angered the Reagan administration, who was trying to take a harder stance against terrorism in the 1980s, especially with Gaddafi's state support of terror organizations. Reagan did not recognize Libya's claims to the Gulf of Sidra, based once again on international law. So in 1981, he would dispatch the U.S. Sixth Fleet for what would be called Freedom of Navigation Exercises, or FON, to contest these claims. This basically means that military assets would be put into the Gulf to try and, in a sense, taunt the opposing military to come out and contest these claims. In modern news, you see this all the time in the Straits of Taiwan between both China, the United States, and Taiwan. China claims these as their own, and we still do freedom of navigation exercises to this day to contest those claims. Pictured is the USS Nimitz, the flagship of the U.S. Sixth Fleet in 1981. So the first incident, the first dogfight, Gulf of Sidra, 1981. So day one, we would see our two protagonists, Fast Eagle 102 and 107, launch for the first day of freedom of navigation exercises. They belong to Naval Fighter Squadron VF-41, the Black Aces. Fast Eagle 102 was crewed by Commander Henry Hank Kleeman, along with Radar Intercept Officer, aka Rio, Lieutenant Dave Venlet. And then Fast Eagle 107, his wingman was crewed by a first tour junior officer, Lieutenant Larry Musinski, with Rio, Lieutenant Jim Anderson. The first day saw no action. However, there was a response by 70 Libyan aircraft. To note, in regards with Fast Eagle 102 and 107, they had intercepted a pair of MiG-23s and had gotten onto their 6 o'clock, where Fast Eagle 102 pulled up to the side of one of them, took a picture of this MiG, and then flipped them the bird, aka they kept up foreign relations, just like in Top Gun. I personally believe the movie was based off of this incident in a whole, just with the small little coincidences that happen both in real life and in the movie. But yes, what happened in Top Gun did happen in real life, which I find hilarious. So yeah, day 2, this is the actual day of the engagement. So they were out on an early morning patrol in the Gulf of Sidra. When around 7:15, right before they're about to return to base to the boat, the airborne early warning and control aircraft picked up 2 Libyan Su-22s heading directly towards Fast Eagle 102 and 107. So they turned to intercept them. Upon intercepting at about, I believe it was 13 nautical miles, one of the Su-22s fired an AA-2 ATOL missile at Fast Eagle 102. To note, the rules of engagement at the time were very strict. It was strictly a you can only fire if fired upon situation. So even if they had intercepted, they would have not engaged this aircraft unless they had fired, which they had done so. So this now entered a dogfight. Fast Eagle 102 and 107 would turn on the Bandit when 102 would recognize that both of them were engaging the same aircraft. So 102 called to his wingman to engage the first Su-22, and he pulled off to engage the other one. Fast Eagle 107 would kill the Su-22 who fired on them with a AIM-7 Sparrow with an effective splash, and 107 would turn on, or Fast Eagle 102 would turn on to the second Su-22 and fire on them. A funny story with this is after 102 fired the bandit or killed the first bandit, and 107 had gotten on behind the second bandit, and he called out to his wingman. He goes, "Hank, do you want me to shoot this guy down?" Because in the back of his head, this guy's heading south back towards Libya. He's not a threat. He's like, "Come on, shoot him down." So he ends up shooting the guy down, and they're going on their way to return to base. And the Nimitz gives them a call, and they just go, "Fast Eagle, you have clearance to defend yourself." And Fast Eagle 102 calls back, 102, 107, 2 enemy kills. So they had acted, accordingly to their rules of engagement, and already taken care of the threat by the time that the Nimitz had gotten any real notification of what was going on. So this was an excellent job of these Navy air crewmen. The aftermath of it, like I said, there was a justified use of lethal action. So this saw, no real pushback from the international community. There was, of course, petitions to the United Nations for both the United States and Libya after this, but there would see no, materialized legal implications from this. Gaddafi pledged to avenge his downed aircraft in blood, and this would, cause a rise in tensions and a couple more Gulf of Sidra incidents as the 80s went on. But yeah, the tensions in the region were heightened, but the U.S. Navy demonstrated its superiority. And these crew members did an excellent job and would be the first men to claim air victories for the United States since the Vietnam War. So this was a big deal back in the day. So now we're going to be moving on to the second Gulf of Sidra incident. This one gets a little muddier than the first one, not only with a more relaxed sense of rules of engagement, but also the lead aircraft piloted by the commanding officer of the VF-32, the squadron involved, and the Rio. They had a lot of missteps in their engagement of this enemy, and would actually be highlighted in Top Gun classes for future naval weapons fighter school attendees. So yeah, January 4th, 1989. Once again, freedom of navigation exercises were executed in response to a chemical factory buildup in Libya. Reagan was still the president at the time, and he dispatched the USS John F. Kennedy, CVN 67, to go and conduct these exercises. On January 4th, an E-2 AWACS informed the crew that 2 MiG-23s had gone airborne and were heading relative to their position. However, unlike 1981, the rules of engagement had been relaxed. So if an enemy had turned in on you, if you had turned, right, and the enemy had turned to follow you, and they had done this 3 times, you had now had a weapons clearance to engage this bandit. So this will play a big factor here in a couple minutes. And then, yeah, Gypsy 202 and 207 of VF-32, the Fighting Swordsman, were one of the two ships sent out on combat air patrol that day to intercept. Lead ship Gypsy 207 was once again crewed by the CO, Commander Joseph Bernard Connolly, and his RIO, Commander Leo Enright. Wingman Gypsy 202 was crewed by Munster Cook and his RIO, Lieutenant Commander Stephen Collins. All right, so as they are moving in onto this pair of MiG-23s, Gypsy 207 calls out that he thinks he's being turned on. However, this was most likely a glitch with the F-14's radar, like I was talking about earlier, where as he was turning to intercept, it would cause that anomaly in his radar picture to where it would seem like they were turning in on him too. This was confirmed by the E2, who on his picture confirmed that the MiGs were flying straight, or it was a minimal change in course. So during this, Kennedy, the John F. Kennedy calls for warning yellow, weapons hold. Repeat, warning yellow, weapons hold. This means that do not fire. You're not cleared to fire. Hold your weapons, right? I'll actually be playing that clip here in a second for y'all. And as is happening, Gypsy Flight descends to get below the MiGs. The Soviet radar at the time had a terrible time looking below the aircraft, so this was a tactical maneuver to get below the MiG-23s. All right, I will be playing that clip now for you for the lead up of the engagement.
Your bogies have jinked back into us now. Let's come starboard 30 degrees the other side.
Close out, warning yellow, weapons hold. I repeat, warning yellow, weapons hold. Alpha Bravo out.
So as you see, it almost seems like Gypsy 207 has what they call knife in the teeth. He's ready to get after it. However, he has that weapons hold, and that will transition us into the action portion of this engagement. So there's a lot of panic in the cockpit. I'll be playing this clip in a second, but as you guys are about to hear, 207 calls, "Bogey's jinked on me for the 5th time. Master Arm on, he's jinked on me again," right? He's freaking out. Again, on his picture, this bandit keeps turning in on him. He keeps feeling like he's about to get engaged. So, against his weapons hold priority, he believes he's within his rules of engagement. So he calls Master Arm on. He is getting he's getting his aircraft prepped to engage if need be. And here's that clip for you now.
Jinked back at me again for the 5th time. They're on my nose now. Inside of 20 miles. Master Arm on, Master Arm on. See, good light. Good light. Okay, centering up the T. Bogey is jinked back into me again. 16 miles, center the dot.
So as you see, again, you can hear the panic in their voices. They don't really have a good idea of the situation around them. They believe that they are being turned in on and that they might possibly be engaged. And you can really hear the panic in that voice. Next up on the gun cam, you're going to hear him call out, what's his Angels? And he's going to call Angels 5, right? And then afterwards, he's not saying, not my Angels, the bogey's Angels. And so he finally calls out Angels 9. So there's further miscommunication in this panic state of potential combat, to where even communication between the two ship of Gypsy 207 and 202 is starting to happen. After this, out of nowhere, seemingly, Gypsy 207 calls 13 nautical miles, Fox 1. And you even hear his pilot go, "Oh, Jesus." Like, he was not expecting that. So once again, a miscommunication from their end. And the real issue is, so for further context, the Rio can fire the missiles in the backseat, can fire the AIM-7s and the AIM-54s. He fired the first AIM-7. Again, this is that semi-active radar homing missile. And if you fire a second one, that makes the first AIM-7 go dead. The AIM-7s can only track one target at one time. You can only fire one AIM-7 at one time, unlike the Phoenix. So this was yet another mistake by Gypsy 207. So both those missiles miss, and I'll be playing that audio for you now.
Hey, your Angels. I'm at Angels 5, nose up. Oh, his Angels.
No, wait a minute.
Angels are at 9.
Alpha Bravo from 207.
13 miles. Fox 1, Fox 1.
Oh, Jesus.
So as you see that panic state, that, oh Jesus, right? Like these guys, certainly are freaking out in the cockpit. Meanwhile, Gypsy 202 engages his bandit as weapons have been released. It's a weapons-free environment. He has to defend himself and his wingman. He successfully splashes a MiG-23 with the Sparrow. Ward Carroll is a YouTuber and an ex F-14 Rio, and had actually spoken to Munster about the incident. And with the closing speed of himself and the MiG-23 in the merge, he said after the splash, it reminded him of the Challenger explosion. And it was right outside of his window, which I just think would be a remarkable sight to see as an aviator, especially Cold War aviator, where these kind of engagements don't ever happen. So anyways, 202 successfully splashes the MiG, and then 207 comes back to re-engage his MiG. He's lost both of his Sparrows, and they're within range for Fox 2. So his pilot is now in a Fox 2 situation, but is calling out, I can't get an effing tone. I can't get an effing tone. And in the back seat, his Leo's calling the whole time, select Fox 2. Select Fox 2. Select Fox, right? What's happening is when you select the Sidewinder, there's going to be an oral tone that you're going to hear in the next clip, and it's very apparent when you have a Sidewinder on and when you have a Sparrow or a Phoenix. And so originally he doesn't have that tone. He doesn't have a single tone because he's on the wrong weapon selector. If you see up here on the screen, there's red weapon selector switch, and what he's currently in is in that top position that is selected on Sparrow Phoenix. He can't operate a Sidewinder without being in that without being on that toggle. And so what happens next is on the last select Fox, he finally gets the Sidewinder, he gets the tone, you get a lock, you hear that screaming Sidewinder tone, and he lets the missile go, splashes the MiG, and they turn for home.
Select Fox 2. Select Fox 2. That's Fox 2. Coming hard, stop. So fucking shoot him. I haven't got a tone. Got the second one. I got the second one on the nose right now. Hey, I'm high cover on you. Lock him up. Lock him up. Bam, shoot him, Fox 2. I can't, I don't have a fucking tone. Select. Good kill. Hey, good kill.
There was multiple missteps, not only with weapon employment and communication, that would not necessarily show the best of naval aviation and naval fighter combat. And like I said earlier, this exact incident became a case study within the Top Gun school of what not to do and, how to stay cool, or reminder of to stay cool in a situation. Because let's say, he didn't have those seconds to spare to switch to Sidewinder, that could have been a downed F-14. So yeah, the aftermath of the incident, the international community was angered, as it was not really clear if the Libyan aircraft were engaging. They didn't, according to radar pictures, they didn't turn in a threatening way, as well as they had their radars turned off. And it had been confirmed that they were carrying air-to-air missiles at the time, but those AAM-7s that they were carrying required a radar to use at their maximum range. So I don't even know if they saw the F-14s until it was too late, and it's really muddy whether or not they were actually going to engage the F-14s. And once again, on the performance of Gypsy 207, the junior lieutenant, Munster Cook, the aviator who shot down the MiG in Gypsy 202, it was his first combat tour, his first onboard ship tour, and he had ended up winning Fighter Pilot of the Year over the CEO of his squadron, which I think is a real telltale sign and reflection of the F-14 community's opinion on Gypsy 207's performance, and honestly on whether or not he should have engaged. But once you fire a weapon, you are in a combat situation, and Gypsy 202 did respond accordingly. So yeah, that is the end of my presentation. I hope you learned a little bit about the F-14 Tomcat and its weapon systems, as well as why it was such an amazing aircraft for the time of its day. I hope you also learned a little bit about Cold War air-to-air combat, something that you don't really see much outside of the Gulf War. the first Gulf War, I should say. So, yeah, I hope you guys learned something a little bit on naval aviation on the F-14, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Here's my bibliography, and thank you so much. Take care.